After my father-in-law's funeral, my unemployed husband inherited $500 million and immediately dumped me with a smirk, saying, "You're useless to me now." During the divorce, the lawyer chuckled and asked him, "Did you even bother to read the will?" His face drained of color because the will clearly stated, "I'm Giselle Johnson, and I never thought I'd be standing in my own living room, heart pounding like a drum in my chest, staring at divorce papers waved in my face like some cruel trophy. I'm 42, a sales manager for a tech firm in Atlanta, where the humid air clings to your skin and the oak-lined streets seem to whisper secrets heavier than they should be. My life wasn't always this tangled mess. I used to think I had it all mapped out. A decent job, a nest egg tucked away, a heart still daring to hope for something real. But that morning when Ryan, my husband, stood there with a smirk curling his lips and said, "I don't need you anymore, Giselle," it felt like the earth split beneath me. His words weren't just a blade, they were a betrayal that cut deeper than I could have imagined. "Dad's bank account has $500 million, he sneered, his eyes glinting with a greed I'd never fully seen before. "I'm set for life." "You were just the ATM until I got it." My stomach twisted, a sick churn that made my knees weak. I'd glimpsed Ryan's selfishness before, small things, like how he'd dodge dishes or flash that boyish grin to worm out of responsibility. But this was a cold, calculated cruelty I hadn't fathomed. He'd married me, played the part of a loving husband, all while biding his time for his father's death to cash in. Worse, he was dragging his dad's name, my father-in-law, a man who'd treated me like his own daughter, through the mud. I stood there, fists clenched so tight my nails bit into my palms, fighting the urge to scream, to shatter his smugness with the truth I knew. My father-in-law had passed just days ago, and the grief still clawed at me, raw and unrelenting. Ryan's words were a betrayal of us both. I wanted to lash out, to tell him what a spineless coward he was, but a quiet voice in my head, maybe my father-in-law's, steady and kind, whispered, "Stay calm, Giselle." So I took a shaky breath, the kind that burns your lungs, and snatched the papers from his hand. The pen felt heavy as I signed, my signature a jagged line of resolve. "Fine," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside. "File them yourself. Send my stuff when you're done." I walked out of that sprawling Atlanta house, past the manicured lawn and the life I'd thought we'd built, the oak trees casting long shadows that felt like they were reaching for me. Anger and relief churned together, a strange cocktail that made my heart race. Ryan thought he'd won, but he was about to learn the hard way. That $500 million he was banking on? It was a mirage, and I knew the truth. To understand how I ended up here, you need to know where I started. I wasn't always this jaded, this battle-scarred. A few years ago, I was married to my first husband, a quiet man who worked construction. We weren't rich, but we were happy, saving for a modest house in Atlanta's suburbs, dreaming of a backyard where we could sip coffee on Sunday mornings. Then came the call that shattered everything. A car accident on a job site. He didn't make it. The grief was a weight I carried everywhere, heavy as a stone, relentless as the Georgia summer. Between life insurance and a severance package, I ended up with $500,000. It was more money than I'd ever seen, but it felt like blood money, tainted by loss. My in-laws, sweet souls in their late 70s, urged me to keep it. "You're young, Giselle," they said. "Use it to start over." I offered to share it with my brother-in-law and his wife, but they took only a small piece, insisting the rest was mine. So there I was, 39, widowed, sitting on a fortune that felt like a curse. I threw myself into work, drowning in sales pitches and client meetings, but when I came home to my small apartment, the silence was deafening. I'd make coffee for 2 out of habit, then stare at the extra mug, the ache in my chest blooming like a bruise. I wasn't broke, but I was broken, longing for someone to fill the quiet, to make the world feel less hollow. That's when Ryan Carter walked into my life. Ryan was a sales rep at a partner company, 43, with a boyish charm that softened his rough edges. He could light up a room with a joke, his smile disarming in a way that made you forget your guard. We'd cross paths at work events, trading quips about clients or tech trends over lukewarm conference coffee. One day, I let it all spill out, my husband's death, the loneliness that clung to me like damp air. Most people would have squirmed, but Ryan listened, his eyes soft. He cracked a gentle joke, just enough to coax a laugh from me, the first in months. "Your husband was lucky to have you," he said. "Me? I'm a disaster at relationships, dumped faster than a bad Tinder date." His self-deprecation felt honest, and I was drawn to it. We started meeting outside work, grabbing drinks at a dive bar in Midtown, talking about everything from 90s music to our childhoods. Ryan grew up in Atlanta, overshadowed by his father, a real estate tycoon who'd built a fortune flipping properties. His mom left when he was young, chasing a lavish life his dad wouldn't bankroll, leaving Ryan with a chip on his shoulder, always striving to prove himself, but never quite making it. I didn't see the warning signs then, too caught up in his warmth. One night, as we walked the Beltline, he picked up a crumpled receipt I'd dropped and stuffed it into his wallet, already bursting with loose change and scraps of paper. "You're like a kid, Ryan," I teased, laughing as he fumbled with coins. "Hey, I'm 43. Thank you very much," he shot back, grinning. That moment, small as it was, made the hole in my heart feel smaller. A year later, when Ryan confessed his feelings, I hesitated. My first husband's memory lingered, a soft ache, but it felt like he was nudging me forward. So I said yes, ignoring friends who whispered it was too fast. Over barbecue one night, Ryan caught me off guard. "Giselle, we're not getting any younger. Why don't we just get married?" His eyes sparkled with that impulsive energy I'd grown to love. I laughed, thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. My gut screamed to slow down, but his confidence was infectious. "Okay," I said, surprising myself. "Let's do it." Then he dropped another bombshell, casual as if mentioning the weather. "Oh, by the way, I'm living with my dad. He's been sick, needs help. You cool with that?" I froze. Why hadn't he told me sooner? "Didn't want to scare you off," he said with a shrug. "Meet him, you'll see." I agreed, hoping it wouldn't change things, but meeting his father would shape everything. Walking into Ryan's dad's house in suburban Atlanta felt like crossing into another world. The red brick three-story home stood under ancient oaks, practical yet imposing, whispering of old money. My stomach churned with nerves. I'd heard about his dad, a retired developer who'd built half of Georgia's strip malls, but meeting him felt like a test. Ryan, unfazed, swung open the gate like he was strolling into a bar. "Relax, Giselle," he said, flashing that grin. "Dad's gonna love you." Inside, the house smelled of cedar and old books. His dad sat in a recliner, propped up with pillows, his face kind but weary, frail from illness. "Sorry to meet you like this," he said, his voice warm despite the strain. "I'm not as spry as I used to be." I smiled, hiding my nerves. "No trouble at all," I said. We hit it off instantly. He asked about my job, diving into market trends like a mentor. Ryan, meanwhile, scrolled his phone, bored. "Dad's stingy," he muttered later. "Could have built a mansion, but we're stuck here." I frowned, glancing at the sprawling house. Stingy? I let it slide, too warmed by his dad's welcome. When we married, we moved into his dad's house. It made sense. There was space, and his dad needed help. Ryan quit his job to care for him, claiming he wanted to be a better son. I was skeptical. His wallet was still a chaotic mess of receipts. But I admired his heart. My salary covered us, and his dad paid his own expenses, so I agreed. At first, it was good. I'd come home from long days to Ryan cooking simple dinners, his dad sharing stories of his real estate days. Like building a community center that still stood in downtown Atlanta. He wasn't just a businessman. He cared about people, funding charities, mentoring dreamers. "You've got a good head, Giselle," he'd say. "Don't let my boy drag you down." But cracks appeared fast. Ryan's diligence faded. I'd find him on the couch, dishes piling up, takeout bags littering the counter. His dad's face tightened at the neglect. Then money started disappearing from my account. I'd given Ryan access for emergencies, a naive trust. One day, a vintage Mustang gleamed in the driveway. "Whose car?" I demanded. "Mine," Ryan said, polishing golf clubs. "You got your fancy bathroom. I deserve something." The bathroom was his dad's idea, a practical renovation with a walk-in shower for his mobility. Ryan had spent $50,000 of my savings, car, clubs, clothes, without a word. I was livid, not just at the money, but at his entitlement. "You can't just take my savings," I snapped. He shrugged. "Dad's loaded. We'll be set soon." His callousness chilled me. He was counting down to his dad's death, seeing him as a paycheck. I wanted to leave, but I couldn't abandon his dad, who deserved better. Living with Ryan became a tightrope walk. I'd come home exhausted, pitching software to demanding clients, to find Ryan lounging amid takeout containers. I cooked, cleaned, while he hired a caregiver to dodge his dad's needs. I snapped one night, pointing at the sink. "What's homemaker mean to you, Ryan?" He rolled his eyes. "Relax, Giselle, you're so uptight." Uptight? I was keeping us afloat while he bled my savings dry. Another $10,000 gone, this time on a watch. I locked him out of my accounts, my hands shaking with rage. He didn't flinch. You'll see, Giselle. I'm going to be set. His confidence made my skin crawl. My father-in-law and I grew closer. In his study lined with photos of community projects, he'd say, "You're too good for this, Giselle." He shared stories of his biggest dream, a community center in East Atlanta that cost him millions and failed. "I'd do it again," he said, eyes alight. When I mentioned our creaky porch, he rebuilt it with a ramp, making the yard a haven. Ryan, of course, saw favoritism, storming off when his dad denied him a new TV. Ryan's always been careless, his dad sighed, heavy with disappointment. One day, he asked me to help with his end-of-life plans. We pored over his accounts, and I learned the truth Ryan didn't know. His community center project had tanked, and he'd borrowed $500 million, using his savings as collateral. If he couldn't repay it, the bank would take it all. "Ryan needs to know," he said. I promised to handle it, my heart aching. When my father-in-law passed, the house felt empty, his laughter gone. I was still grieving when Ryan walked in, grinning, waving divorce papers. "Dad's account has $500 million, he crowed. "I don't need you anymore." His words were a gut punch, his betrayal of his dad's memory a fresh wound. I signed the papers, my pen trembling, and walked out, a laugh bubbling up as I drove away. Ryan thought he'd won, but he didn't know the truth. Days later, in a hotel, my phone buzzed. Ryan, panicked, shouted, "The bank says Dad's account is locked." I leaned back calm. "That $500 million? It's collateral for a loan your dad couldn't repay. It's gone. He left you $75,000. Silence. "I'm broke," he whispered, his world crumbling. I felt no pity. "You made your choices, Ryan." He sent me $35,000, half his inheritance, probably to avoid a fight. I heard he's scraping by as a delivery driver, his dreams of millions shattered. I bought a midtown condo, its balcony overlooking Atlanta's skyline. The $35,000 sits in my savings, a reminder of my father-in-law's heart. I'm back to work, closing deals, coming home to a place that's mine. I'm not the grieving widow or the betrayed wife anymore. I'm Giselle, building something new, one step at a time. To everyone who's followed this journey, thank you. If my story stirred you, hit subscribe. Keep carving your path, and I'll see you in the next chapter. B.